program. Welcome everyone to Roger Williams Letters. My name is actually not Devin Kurtz. As you can see, the face doesn't match the picture if you saw the picture beforehand. My name is Sparkle Bryant, and I'm one of the park rangers at Roger Williams National Memorial. At this moment, I'd like to introduce John McNiff, who is the lead ranger at Roger Williams National Memorial, and the guy who knows almost everything there ever is to know about Roger Williams. So John, can you come on the screen?
I can do that. Hi, everybody. I'm gonna roll into this a little bit slowly because it seems like there are still people that are sort of coming on here. We've got a really nice letter tonight. This letter dates from June of 1682, which means it's at the end of Roger Williams' life. He only lives another 6 or 8 months after this. This letter is, as he says, it's a testimony, but it's considered evidence of how the original town of Providence and how Rhode Island was settled, the original relationship in between Roger Williams and the Native Americans. And it's really a neat piece. One of the things that I'm always fascinated about when you have these original letters in front of you is looking at the penmanship. Okay. There was a thought in Roger's brain. He dipped his pen in ink and put those thoughts down on paper. So this is as close a connection to someone's thoughts centuries away that you can possibly get. And we're going to be taking a look at a lot of different aspects of these letters during the course of all of these talks. But that's what I find really fascinating about all of these. There's taking the hand with the quill pen in it, dipping it into the ink, and putting those thoughts onto a piece of paper. As I said, this comes at the end of Roger's life, and he's trying to straighten out all the ideas about this. All different people in all the different towns at this point are coming up with different reasons why this place was settled, different reasons why that place was settled. There are arguments about territories and boundaries, and this is after King Philip's War, the devastating war that is one of the deadliest wars in American history per capita. This is after that. And as I said, Roger has about 6 or 8 months to live. Okay. The letter consists of 3 pages. What's going to happen is I'm going to show them up on screen. I'm going to read each page. And then we're going to go back and take a look at what he's saying, how he's saying it, and taking a look at his writings in some places, seeing exactly, trying to get in touch across the centuries to this guy that's writing down his thoughts towards the end of his life. Does that all make sense to everybody? Does that sound like fun? Excellent. Now I'm going to try the great electronic experiment here. There. Screen share. Can everybody see the picture? The letter?
Yes, we can. But if we can ask people to turn off their cameras just because of the bandwidth.
All right. I'm not going to zoom in very much on this to begin with. We're going to come back and take a closer look at things that are in the letter here. But this is the first page. And the very first thing at the top of the page is where he's writing from and the date. Okay. I think it's an important thing to notice that this is not Providence. It starts out Narragansett, June 18th, 1682 at Volgo. I testify, as in the presence of the great, almighty, and all-seeing God, that above 50 years since, I, coming into this Narragansett country, found a great contest between three sachems, to wit, Canonicus and Miantinomi, were against Usamiquin on the Plymouth side. I was forced to travel between them there to pacify, to satisfy all their and their descendants' spirits on the honest intentions to live peaceably by them. I testify that it was the general and constant declaration that Canonicus, his father, had 3 sons, whereof Canonicus was the heir, and his younger brother's son, Miantinomu, because of youth, was his marshal and executioner, and did nothing without his uncle Canonicus' consent. And therefore I declare to posterity that were it not for the favor that God gave me with Canonicus, none of these parts, no, not Rhode Island, had been purchased or obtained, for I never got anything out of Canonicus but by gift. Page 1. This is page 2. I also profess that being inquisitive of what root the title or denomination Nahigansett should come, I heard that Nahigansett was so named for a little island between Pettaquamscut and Misquamicut on the sea and fresh water side. I went on purpose to see it, and about the place called Sugarloaf Hill, I saw it, and was within a pole of it, but could not learn why it was called Nahigansett. I had learnt that the Massachusetts was so called from the Blue Hills, a little inland thereabout. And Canonicus' father and ancestors, living in those southern parts, transferred and brought their authority and name to these northern parts, all along the seaside, as appears by the great destruction of wood all along near the seaside. And I desire posterity to see the gracious hand of the Most High, in whose hand is all hearts, that when the heart of my countrymen and friends and brethren failed me, his infinite wisdom and mercy stirred up the barbarous heart of Canonicus to love me as his son to his last gasp, by which means I had not only Miantinomu and all the Coesit sachems, my friends, but Osamiquin also, who because of my great friendship with him at, is where the page ends, 3rd page, Plymouth, and the authority of Canonicus consented freely, being also well gratified by me, to the Governor Winthrop, and my enjoyment of prudence, yea, of providence itself, and all the other lands I procured of Canonicus, which were upon the point, an effect that so ever I desired of him, and he never denied, and I never denied him nor Miantinomu whatever they desired of me, as to goods or gifts or use of my boat and pinnace, and the travails of my own person, day and night, which though men know not, nor care to know, yet the all-seeing eye hath seen, and his all-powerful hand hath helped me. Blessed be his holy name to eternity. Roger Williams. That's an awesome letter. There's an awful lot packed into this entire thing. And by an awful lot packed in, I want to show something down at the bottom here. I don't know how many people had Blue Book exams in college, or had some sort of, well, didn't necessarily plan their thoughts out to be written in a handwritten letter. But notice down at the bottom of page 1 here that I'm showing, the bottom line is all scrunched in there. It's one of the parts of Roger Williams that seems so very human, is that you can see his thoughts running on in a lot of different letters, and his letters are relatively large. They're nice and smooth across the page, and then he gets towards the bottom of the page and he doesn't want to break his thought, so he squeezes the last line in. It's always been fun looking at that. Now, up at the top of the page, this is again the first page. You have the date line across the top. Narragansett, 18 June, 1682, and then a big parentheses, et vulgo. Is anybody out there familiar with Latin? How's our Latin stories? Can anybody put in the chat or just come on the mic, tell me what et vulgo means? I know what it is, but why would he put it after 1682? Anybody?
Bro. Just tell us.
In other letters that Roger wrote, he always put so-called at the end of the date. Remember, operating in Europe at this time are two different calendars. That's why you end up having these absolutely wonderful, well, the year, it's so confusing to people that are new to this time period in history, because the year did not end on January 1st for the English. For other parts of Europe, the year ended on December 31st and the new year began January 1st. England kept the old Gregorian calendar long into the 1700s.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So January, February, and March were still part of the previous year. New Year's technically was on March 24th. That was New Year's Eve. And the new year began on March 25th. So quite often when you see in historic documents that something happened in February of, say, 1650, you have to stop and think, which 1650 are they talking about? Is it 1650 or is it 1651? And you have to go back and try and process where that fits in with.
Shakespeare wrote in New English? I thought it was Old English. Modern English, they called it.
This is early modern English. This is the same language that Shakespeare would have spoken. And to let you know how early it is, on the second line here, you have I testify. Okay. And this one right here.
Earl's a pig.
The Y and E. In the presence of the Almighty and all-seeing God. That YE that so many times in that people in the 1800s took it as being the ye old bookshop. It's not ye. That is not a Y. That is a letter that pretty much has been dropped out of the English language in the 1600s, but Roger Williams still uses it. It's a letter called the Thorn, or just Thorn. It is the TH sound. And you'll see it here. You've got ye over here. Let's scroll down and let's see what we can find.
Earl, go get a coffee.
Here is one of the thorns and a T, which would be THT or that. Roger Williams is using the thorn throughout this letter. Here's another the. Okay. That, there's another letter here, which we still use, but not quite as often. It's the ampersand. The and sign. These are all parts of Roger Williams' vocabulary. And quite often he's using that thorn to make it easier and quicker to write things. Page 3. I always like taking a look at Roger's signature. This is Roger. He's 80 years old. Signature is still very strong. The O, you can see, again, remember this is made with a dip pen. It's made in two parts. Starts there, comes around, starts here and comes around. G, E, R, Roger.
Of the eyes.
William. Dotting the long I's. Again, part of this changing new language. The letter J was something brand new. This other letter starting his name, the W, was actually a fairly new letter to the English language. And if you take a look at it really close, the first part almost looks like a 2, and then the U, a double U. The long I, Roger Williams. Now, if you notice, there are 2 paragraphs after the written part of the letter, and I'd like to read through them with you if I could. Excuse me. This is literally, this is where it really touches nicely on this being a very important historical document. This first paragraph here, September the 27th, 1704. I, then being at the house of Nathaniel Coddington's house, there being presented with this written paper, which I attest upon my oath to be my father's own handwriting. Joseph Williams, assistant. Some neat touches with this. Spelling, H-O-W-S-E, house. Written, R-I-T-T-E-N. And yet down here, his own O-N-E, hand, writing, W-R-I-T-E-I-N-G. Daniel Webster's and Merriam-Webster, a few hundred years in the future, spelling was whatever you could get out of it. Another old letter here at the beginning of father is the double F for a capital F.
I love it.
This is, and if you notice, there's 2 very different handwritings. This next paragraph I'll get into in a second. But Joseph Williams learned how to write from his father. When you compare the 2 handwritings, there's an awful lot of similarities. And by the date of this, 1704, a lot of people were moving on to this. The old style that Roger has is called secretarial hand. Joseph Williams learned how to write from his father, so he's still using the old secretarial hand from the beginning of the 1600s. And this second paragraph here is a modified secretarial hand moving on into almost the italic hand that we became familiar with as far as handwriting. The cursive that you probably learned in school. But the second paragraph, zoom in on it. The within evidence is placed to record with the general records of the colony of Rhode Island and Providence plantations, pages 235, 236. February 11th, 1705.
Okay.
West Clark Recorder. Splotches of ink. Remember, you're using a dip pen. One of the things I noted on this very last page here, when you look at it really close, you can tell when Roger's dipping his pen and when he's running out of ink. And it looks like his pen has worn down a little bit because it doesn't hold ink very long. Starting in the center right here. Of, dark ink. Him, starting to dry out. The comma's drying out. A new dip for the ampersand, I, and an N. Then a new dip for the E, V, E, R, and a new dip for the E at the end of the word. Denied, him, a new dip there. You can see as you're going through the letter, every time Roger had to dip his pen to
His what?
re-ink it.
I don't know where he is in the letter.
I never.
And looking in this, use, or he, with the little caret to show that he's use of my boat. Big dip down here, running out of time, space, and everything else.
I really can't read about him transcribing.
This is an interesting letter. It's absolutely amazing. This first page, though, is one of the more important things that Roger wrote. It sets up how Rhode Island became settled. I declare to posterity that were it not for the favor that God gave me with Canonicus, none of these parts, nor not Rhode Island, had been purchased or obtained, for I never got anything out of Canonicus but by gift. It speaks to the relationship of Roger Williams and the leader of the most powerful group of people in New England up until King Philip's War. They were, as is often said, they were the money makers. They had the population. As late as 1675, there were at least 15,000 Narragansett living in Rhode Island. There were only about 1,500
the letters that Roger Williams wrote.
This one page right there sets everything up. And that's what's really interesting is, like I said, down at the very bottom of the page, that scrunched in line at the very bottom, I never got anything out of Canonicus but by gift. People talk about sales, people talk about purchases. None of this would have happened without the relationship that Roger Williams had with Canonicus. This talks about the relationship between the leadership of the different tribes around here, Canonicus, Miantinomi, and also Miquin, who you guys might know more popularly as Massasoit. So I would like at this point to see if we can ask some questions about this. If we can please put the questions in the chat.
Yes, we do.
Okay, good.
First question is, why is it necessary for Roger to make this declaration?
There are all kinds of controversies going back to the 1630s, particularly about Patuxet and the land extensions going around. People are constantly arguing about where the boundaries are, who made the agreements. It gets so bad that the official transcript of the original deed that people see, the deed to Providence, signed by Canonicus and Miantinomi, with the mark of the bow and the mark of the arrow and Roger Williams' signature. The official transcript in the records of the colony of Rhode Island and Providence Plantation have an extra paragraph that gives Patuxet more land. That was not in the original document. When they did a transcription of that document, they originally lost the original deed that was signed, and it disappeared for over 100 years. So the transcription that was in the original records gave legitimacy to the Patuxet settlements. I believe it was the late 17 or the early 1800s. The original deed was found in Patuxet being used by a member of the Arnold family as a seed envelope. And what's really strange is the official document or the official transcription in the official records has that extra paragraph to this day that is not on the document signed by Roger Williams and Miantinomo. So this was a controversy. Who made the agreements? People down in Newport wanted to say that they made the agreements with Canonicus and Miantinomi for the settlements on Aquidneck Island. And Roger Williams is pointing out specifically that Rhode Island, that island, would not have been settled without his relationship with Canonicus and Miantinomo. So it's trying to put an absolute testimony towards the end of his life to say, this is what really happened, and make sure that it gets entered into records. Now, Roger died in 1683. This letter was written in 1682. And as you can see at the very end of it, it only gets entered into the official records in 1705. So it was sitting around somewhere doing nothing. Next question.
Well, that was the only question we had in the chat so far. Does anyone want to come on the mic and ask a question?
I'm going to ask a question. Where do you think this document was for 25 years? That Joseph Williams had to testify that it was his own father's handwriting. I don't have an answer to it. I was just wondering, looking at these things, you have to try and figure these little tidbits out about history. Okay. This is one document about 6 to 8 months before Roger Williams passes away. He's trying to set the record straight on a controversy that has lasted most of his time in New England. And there's a few other evidences, as they're taught, that he writes during different time periods of his life, trying to set the record straight. This is one last attempt to do that. And it's probably one of the last things that he wrote, aside from small notes and things like that. This is probably one of the very last things that he wrote. Cool.
Well, would it have been like in the house of like the town secretary or?
Well, I mean, it may be that it was stuffed into personal papers that nobody went through. Okay. But I see there is a question here. After the original document was signed, where would it have gone? It would not have gone to the king. This is testimony to his, to the rest of the people in the colony that are embroiled in this controversy about where the borders are, who has authority over what. I was born and brought up in Rhode Island. There are, 36, 38 cities and towns that are all jealous of their borders. There are as many police departments, school departments, etc. We're the size of Houston. The whole state is about the size of Houston. Okay. We had 5 state capitals at one point where the government would go from one to the other, from Providence to East Greenwich to Kingston, over to Newport, and then up to Bristol, because nobody could settle on where the state government should sit as one place. That happened like that until about 1840, where it started to get unwieldy, and they decided to whittle it down to just 2 state capitals, Providence and Newport. And that lasted until the State House up in Providence was built in 1900. So we only had 1 state capital from 1900 on. This little community, Rhode Island, is so parochial and divided up that these boundary disputes have been with us from the very beginning. Oh, the original deed. The original deed was a town document. It was kept in the town records, which were a big book. And those town records were actually kept in John Smith's mill for a while, because there were no town buildings, there were no meeting houses or things like that in Providence. It was individual houses. There were no churches in the early years. Until 1700, there were no churches in Providence. So the official records were kept with a member of the town council, and in 1675, that happened to be John Smith, the miller, who had his mill not far from where the Marriott is. And when the mill was attacked during King Philip's War, when Providence was attacked and burned, the mill was set on fire, and Smith saved the town records by throwing them in the mill pond. So a lot of the documents were waterlogged. They were retrieved after the town after the town was burned, and that's why we have any of the original town records from Providence. So it's basically a town setting.
Another question is, when did the bounds finally get settled?
They're still in controversy. Recently, the Connecticut border with, I believe it's Burrillville, there was, Connecticut did, using GPS and satellite surveys and things like that, found half a dozen houses that at least half of them and their properties were technically in Connecticut by these modern surveys. And they started issuing tax bills to the people for property taxes in Connecticut. The people still believed that they lived in Rhode Island and were paying Rhode Island property taxes. So this is still something that boundary disputes don't end in Rhode Island. They just get pushed off to the next year.
Well, that's it for the questions in the chat so far. Does anyone else have any questions? You can come on the mic and ask them. I know that we have a lot of Roger Williams descendants here, so if you guys have any questions about your grandfather or great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. Oh, Olson, are you raising your hand?
What are the other three letters going to be?
Well, I haven't necessarily picked them yet, but they're going to be fun. Do you have anything in particular that you'd like to see?
Well, my relative is Lieutenant Wilkinson, the first Wilkinson in America. And he signed the second set of documents to found the colony. And there was letters written by Williams, at least I think they were letters, against the Quakers.
Well, he wrote a whole book about the Quakers.
Yeah, but there were that he did, but there were two sets of questions that were answered by two different people at two different times, and I'm wondering if they were written separately by him.
I don't. It's possible. I'm not aware of them, but I will take a look around and see if I can find something.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I have one other thing to say. I found a new cousin this week.
Excellent.
Earl's phone. He's a seventh cousin, and he lives in Maine.
Outstanding. Outstanding. It's a small world.
Yes, it is.
Excellent. I noticed that the person mentioned in the chat over here that they're from Rehoboth, Mass, and they were once part of Rhode Island. It's interesting. It works both ways. The entire East Bay, take the Blackstone River and the Pawtucket River, and everything on the East Bay was all part of the Plymouth colony at one point. And that's why you have a Bristol County in Massachusetts, but Bristol is in Rhode Island. And at several different points along the way, there's the Attleboro Gore, which is up in the Cumberland area. There's the opposite side of the Blackstone River that's still part of Pawtucket that was added on. And then you have Little Compton and Tiverton that were added on to Rhode Island out of what had been the Plymouth colony. Sharing and shifting boundaries, it just doesn't end.
Are there any other questions? Come on the mic.
Question. I just want to say thank you. This has been a real interesting journey into history, a real education. Thank you very much. Oh,
Thank you. We're going to be doing it 3 more times. We're going to have some fun with it. I wanted to start off with this letter because it's just such a dynamic content of Roger Williams trying to get that last thing out there, saying this wasn't a monetary transaction. This was a transaction between people that wanted to live together, wanted to be neighbors, and wanted to be friends. And that really lasted for quite a while, particularly for Roger. Even here at the end of his life, he's talking about the friendship and the love that they had for each other. Favorite story that I have about Roger? I could go on for days about Roger. You can ask Sparkle or Devin. I literally can go on for days about Roger. I think, there's too many to get into right now. I mean, seriously, I will at some point just have, we will at some point, I believe in March, we haven't quite set the date yet, but we will have a fireside chat where you'll be able to come in and talk to Roger Williams himself so that we can explore some of those things like the favorite Roger Williams story. So keep watching our Facebook page for events and things like that. The fireside chat's going to be a lot of fun. Roger will be able to answer your questions, talk about things that he thinks are important, and have a little bit of hot chocolate during the process, which was a brand new drink for them.
I saw that Jeff had raised his hand. Jeff, would you like to come on the mic and ask your question? Oh, you're going to type it. Oh, you typed it in the chat. Okay. His question is, do any of Roger's letters discuss his family and other plantation owners?
Rarely. Roger doesn't mention, he mentions one of his daughters and he mentions his wife in his letters. But most of the time he does not go into heavy detail, waxing poetic about his family. He mentions one of his daughters, and I'm off the top of my head, I'm not sure which one, but she was carrying on an affair with a fellow down in Newport. She was 14. And the fellow down in Newport, John Salas, he was kind of upset that this 14-year-old was carrying on this affair with this fellow down in Newport. And you can hear every father throughout history worried about the guy that his daughter's going out with in Roger's comments about this. But he didn't have to worry too much. Within a couple of years, they got married and they had kids. I believe it's one of the first of Roger's children to get married. But
Mary.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, when you read those things, it becomes so real. Because it's not dealing with the politics and kings and things like that. It's dealing with a dad and his daughter. And there's another excerpt where he's talking about, I believe it's a different daughter who's very sick. Very, very sick. So sick that he takes her down to Cocomscussock or to Smith's Castle with him to get out of the city or the town and just be quiet in the countryside. She's very, very ill, and he's very concerned about her. And again, this is the kind of thing where again, it's not world politics. It's not even the importance of boundaries. This is a dad worried about his daughter. But one of the more telling ones is the few times that one time in particular that he mentions his wife. Roger is over in England. He's been away for over a year. Writes back that he's enclosing in the letter some flowers, which would be pressed flowers that he's sending to her. Would have been fresh when he got them. Another 2 or 3 months later is when those flowers are going to get here. So they're going to be dried and pressed. But think about the level of commitment. Roger's marriage was not one of the typical arranged marriages of the time, which were literally made to create a new corporation. Romantic love and marriages was not the norm back then. A marriage was the forming of a corporation where the husband is the chief executive officer, the wife is the chief operating officer, and the children are labor. And you married someone that would make a stronger corporation. And that's why, the same way the royalty would do it, binding England to France, the average person did it so that they'd have a stronger, either more land or more cows or more sheep or something along those lines. It would be a more powerful corporation. And here you can actually get a sense of Roger's commitment and actual love for his wife all the way across the ocean. None of his children followed in the political business, which was a rarity. Most of the time you have John Winthrop, the governor of Massachusetts Bay, John Winthrop Jr., the governor of the Connecticut colony. You see John Cotton Mather. You see these lines of descent where everybody follows in the same line. None of Roger's children went into politics.
I'm not sure Roger wanted to be in politics.
Oh, I think he did. I mean, he grew up in London, basically being mentored by Sir Edward Coke, the Chief Justice of England. Okay. He mentions several times early on that he's trying to make a name for himself, to move himself up in society. When he writes the letter to the Lady Barrington about wanting to marry her niece, he's trying to move up into the inner circle. Okay. And she puts him down the most cruel way by saying, basically, Roger, you don't have the bloodlines. And that's the kind of thing that Roger is running into constantly. And when he gets over here, he knows how to play the political game. He knows he's going to be butting heads with politicians. When he goes back to England on his first trip, he spends a whole bunch of time with his cousin, who happens to be the Lord Protector, Oliver Cromwell. Okay. He's he spends his whole youth at court, at Parliament, taking notes for Sir Edward Coke in that little shorthand that he developed. And nobody's going to suspect that the little kid standing over in the corner is recording the conversation that you're having or the speech that's going on or whatever. And if you catch him and you look at it, it's just scribbles on paper. But Roger was involved in politics from the very start. And I think it was very much a part of his nature. You look at his letter arguments when he's writing in books or in other places, it's a legal argument. He makes a statement and he backs it up with scriptural references. He uses it the same way Coke is codifying the law. Roger is using present, back it up with precedent. So, I mean, he's playing that game constantly.
So then the separation for Roger from Massachusetts is more political than religious separation.
Well, Roger was not against the kind of religion that was being practiced in the Massachusetts Bay, but Roger felt that there should be absolutely no connection in between religion and government. That's the separation that he felt was most important, because he saw in the Massachusetts Bay These people that have given up their lives at home because they won't change their religious beliefs have gone 2 months across the ocean to a very new world to them so they could experience and express their own religious beliefs. But because they got the charter from the King of England, the head of the Church of England, they refused to make that break, that hard break with the Church of England. When they went back to England, they attended Church of England services. And Roger sees the hypocrisy of, after all they've been through to get over here and to start something new, that all they're doing is recreating the same mistakes that led to hundreds of years of bloodshed in Europe. And the only solution that Roger sees is a total break in between religion and state. Only then, where it's no longer the government's business what people do for worship, if they do anything at all, only when they're totally broken can government and religion both work well. Quite often he talks about, I mean, he puts it in the same sense of religion should be like any of the guilds back in England, whether you are the people that make suits, whether you're the people that make barrels, whether you're the goldsmith. Each one of those guilds can set rules for their members' behavior, rules for their members' productivity and everything else. And if you break the rule, that guild can punish you with inside the guild. But the government has no right to tell the guild what it can do on a daily basis. It sets its own rules. And the kicker is, and this is something that Roger addressed as well, when you separate church and state, the great chain of being doesn't exist anymore. Because the great chain of being was where authority came from in the universe. You have God and the angels at the very top. Then you have the kings and the emperors. Then you have the clergy and the nobility. Then you have the upper classes, the middle classes, and the lower classes. And this great chain going all the way down to the mud and muck of the earth. In animals, the flying animals, the walking animals, the swimming animals, the crawling on the belly animals, all the way down, diamonds, gold, silver, everything has its place in this hierarchy. And what Roger does is cut the chain in between God and the angels and the kings and the emperors. And Roger writes in 1642, I believe, that the sovereign, original, and foundation of civil power lies in the people. That the people may form a government that best fits their needs and will only have as much authority as they give it, which is a hard break from the kind of things that the divine right of kings that's being so argued by Charles and James Stuart back over in England during the Civil War period. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. Just curious.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
like I said, I can go on for days about this stuff.
Yeah.
This is just absolutely fascinating.
Well, it's just some of the things that you always learned in school. You learn so very little about Roger Williams. You get his name, he's separated, went to Rhode Island, done. Okay. Yeah. You know, and that's really all you about learn in school. So it's kind of interesting to get some more of the filler, the backstory, the how everything fits together. And
Absolutely.
So yeah, one of my
What's
ancestors
really neat is
settled Rhode Island with him, so that's why we're curious. We're trying to find out more what happened.
Sure. To give you an idea, you know the William Penn story. He came, he was friends with the Indians and wanted religious freedom down in Pennsylvania. That's basically what Roger did 80 years before.
Well, you know, William Penn had a roadmap, so that's not so hard.
Oh, yeah. And Roger Williams knew William Penn's father.
Yeah.
You know, there's these people coming over here and we look at them as being icons and independents. They all knew each other. Everybody knew each other. London back then was the same size that Providence is today. And if you're a Rhode Islander, Rhode Islanders instinctively understand that everybody knows everybody at some level. Whereas in the rest of the world, there's 7 degrees of separation. In Rhode Island, it's usually about 2. And if you're in a particular field, if you're in the construction field, if you're in the political field, if you're in law enforcement, you know everybody in that field, one way or another.
Yeah.
That's the world that Roger Williams grew up in London.
Yeah.
Cool. I know I've gone way off track. We're not talking about letters anymore, but anybody else have anything to say? Think about,
Sorry.
talk about.
Thank you.
No, no, no. I love this stuff. Anybody else? Going once. Going twice. Sparkle, guess what? Sparkle?
It sold.
I think it sold. We're at 7:20 for a program that's only supposed to go to 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Cool.
We're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming on board. This has been
Oh,
absolutely.
wait. We have one more question.
Oh,
Did
good.
many
Okay.
of his letters survive?
Well, we don't know how many he wrote, but there are probably about, I want to say maybe 100, 150 letters that survived. There's a 2-volume set of the letters of Roger Williams that was compiled in the late 70s, early 80s. That it's available in libraries. I know that. I don't think it's still in print, but it's absolutely wonderful if you want to get down to the nitty gritty about what Roger's talking about. It's got an index in the back of volume 2 that can lead you to different subjects. I would not ever suggest you start reading any of Roger's books or Roger Williams' correspondence from the beginning to end. You will fall asleep, get lost, and be in a maze and just absolutely have no idea where you are very shortly after that. Because Roger was not a very direct. And go to the index if you want to. The 2-volume set, Glenn LaFantasy was the editor for that. Go to the back of volume 2, take a look up any one of the subjects that you want to look at, find where they are in the volumes, and read those letters in particular. Glenn did a wonderful job of transcribing these letters. It's all over the place in different libraries, and if your library doesn't have it, I'm sure that you can get an interlibrary loan. Anybody else?
I think that's it.
Okay. Again, thank you everybody for coming on board. We hope to see you next month. We'll put a new link to register for next month's talk. And in between now and then, I'm going to be finding a new letter to take a look, delve into. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.